Yo guys, how's it going? It's Market Scraper. So in my last update yesterday, I talked about how there's an imminent big move coming to Palantir stock. And so we saw today a pretty significant move to the upside, over 5% move. And I think intraday we went to like 8% at some point. So this was a pretty huge move for Palantir stock, especially in the recent history. This is a pretty massive move. Now, is this going to continue, or are we going to go to the downside? Are we going to retrace and fill this gap? What's going to happen next? We're going to talk a little bit about that now. But before we get into this video, if you get any value from this content, don't forget to put a smash down on that like button. It really helps this content, helps other people see this video. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It's free to do, and I'd really appreciate it. So the first time we talked about Palantir stock recently, we were right over here on the 29th, talking about this idea that this line is important. And technically speaking, again, this doesn't look like a really great technical pattern, arguably a head and shoulders pattern. But the thing is that in terms of what's going on right now, in terms of around tech in the S&P 500, the psychological number of 4,000 for the S&P 500, I talked about my idea and my hypothesis that basically the S&P 500 wants to go to 4,000 in the near future. And to get there, I had this hypothesis that tech would be needed to get that push up to 4,000. And not only that, we had the catalyst of basically the infrastructure stimulus today. And so that helped push stocks up, or at least the anticipation of that helped push stocks up, absolutely. So we had these things in place, in motion, and basically we had this hypothesis and we're seeing it play out every day. The next day, we weren't able to close below this line. And then today, we had this big move, which we were thinking was going to happen pretty soon. And so now that we have this big move, but we have this gap here, we have to be aware of that because we want to be aware of the fundamentals here, but we also want to be aware of what's going on technically, and are we going to see a retracement here? And I'm not so sure if we're going to see a retracement here in the near future. At some point in the future, would we actually fill this gap? It's definitely possible at some point in the future, but like I said yesterday, I'm expecting a trend reversal and a continuation of this trend. Now, how high will this trend actually go? I'm not exactly sure, but it's going to be more than just a two-candle trend. I think we're going to have a significant move to the upside. And again, with S&P 500, I'm expecting that to hit 4,000 or right around 4,000. And today we didn't quite get there, but we had a huge move up. And we'll get into the S&P 500 a little bit later. But let's look at a few things in the tech sector to kind of back up what we're seeing in Palantir stock right now. And also what we're seeing in terms of our hypothesis that tech is actually raising the S&P 500 right now too. And we're seeing Apple. Apple had a huge move up. It also gapped up. So we're seeing a gap up in multiple stocks. And this is when you see this happening across multiple stocks, we're seeing a potential bottom in a sector potentially. We're seeing it in Apple. We're seeing it also in Tesla. And we're also seeing it in Palantir. Palantir is obviously not within the S&P 500, but we're seeing this in tech, this gap up here. So we saw this in Tesla, we saw this in Apple. So this doesn't mean we have to retrace this level necessarily, because this is like a broad market lift for this sector. This is a pretty bullish sign. And for me, again, with my hypothesis in place and what my biases are, so be aware of my biases. I've been clear with my biases this whole time that I'm thinking S&P 500 is going to 4,000 soon, and I think tech is going to help push that. And if you guys have any disagreements with this hypothesis, definitely consider why you might think this is not true and understand where I might be wrong, because I'm not saying that I'm right in what I'm thinking, but we're seeing this play out so far. So I think we're going to see a continuation. We are hitting some resistance with Tesla at the moment. And in addition, not only with Tesla, but if we look at Apple, we did also close below this 150-day moving average. So maybe we're having some trouble here, or maybe we needed to spike through it so that we can open above it or get above it the next day or so. So that might be what the setup is for this, for us to reclaim the 150-day moving average. And I do think Apple is really important, and it kind of where Apple goes, a lot of other tech stocks will go as well. So we're seeing that in multiple places. We're seeing this in Palantir as well. So because of that, the need to fill a gap on an individual stock is less important. And if we see Apple filling the gap where Apple made a gap, we might expect that Palantir would follow suit as well. But if the whole sector is rising in a similar fashion, there might be something bigger that's happening beyond just Palantir stock. So beyond just the stock pattern here and the technicals and the idea that we would think that this gap would be filled. So we're going to look past this gap here. And I'm kind of on the bias of we're going to go to the upside. And let's also look at what Hylian did today too. So it looks like we were staying within this basically this structure here still, this massive structure. We are still staying within it. Now the question is, are we going to break out to the upside? And if we do break out to the upside, I'm expecting a pretty significant move from Hylian if we do. So we kind of expect this to happen in the next few days. So it could happen definitely tomorrow. I kind of expect it to happen tomorrow if we see a continuation from that price action that we saw today. And if we don't see it tomorrow, we're definitely going to see something happen in the next couple of days, is my guess. Whether it is to the upside or to the downside, I have the bias at the moment looking at this based on other tech. Maybe Hylian won't trade with other tech, and that's definitely a possibility. But if Hylian does trade with other tech, the bias right now is to the upside based on the bias I have right now with other tech going to the upside. So the S&P 500 here, I talked about that I saw this flagging pattern here, basically this bullish flag, and basically we would go to the upside and go to 4,000 and probably touch 4,000. Maybe we get a little bit above 4,000. So I'm still seeing that on the plate here, but at the same time, we have to be aware of the bullish and bearish scenarios. So what do I see here that's bearish? Well, we just hit a double top, basically. We were a few cents shy of all-time highs. So this was a indication where we could see a reversal, and we did see a reversal intraday for the S&P 500. Now, will this play out as a reversal pattern, or are we building energy to finally get above the all-time high? So this is kind of you have to look at this from a few different angles when you're looking at the technical analysis. So I think we are still going to go to 4,000. And like we looked at yesterday, we saw the different things that happened when the S&P 500 hit 300 and also when it hit even 200. Again, we had a lot of resistance and we couldn't really get above 300. We got like a little bit above 300 here, were rejected for several days, went back up, spiked above it, and had a significant correction. And this is exactly the playbook like we saw when we hit 200. We had a similar rejection and then a significant pullback. So I'm kind of getting the feeling, since it happened for 200 and 300, that we might see something similar in the cards for 400 as well. Maybe we hit 400 and then have a pullback, hit 400 again, maybe spike through it, and then have a significant correction possibly before the next thing happens within the market. So I'm at least very aware of this idea. And so that's kind of my framework. That will be my bias, my expectation of what may happen. And of course, if the S&P 500 goes a lot higher and just breaks through, that's completely fine. But my expectation at the moment is we go to 4,000, going to have a pullback, and then we're going to go to 4,000 or again 400 in the SPY and break through it a little bit, maybe $1, $2, $3, $4, $5, and then break below it again. And so that's the question. We have to see if when we break back below it, will we find support at 4,000 or 400, or will we break below it? I think that's going to be the telltale. After we break it the second time, will we fall down below it? And if we do, I'm expecting a significant correction, probably at the very minimum, back to this line right here. And so that's kind of what I'm seeing right now for the S&P 500. Again, none of this is financial advice. This is, again, based on my hypothesis of the S&P 500 going to 4,000 and needing tech to lift its sales to get there. And in addition, looking at history, what happened when it went to 300 and 200, and based on that alone, kind of the psychological things of what traders in the past have done, might be a similar thing of what traders might do in the present as well. Well, I hope you guys got some value from this content. If you haven't already, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel for more content like this, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. And keep in mind that none of this is financial advice. This is just some random guy on YouTube drawing some stick figure lines on a chart talking to you guys.